The trial of the century, day 6, the crime the Democrats still haven't named. They call it hush money. We call it a porn star shakedown. Nothing in the law calls either illegal. Trump's free speech went on trial today. Democrat prosecutors want the former president fined for talking. $1,000 a pop. Something tells me that won't make it stop. Bragg's begging the judge to gag the Republican nominee for president from talking. The prosecutor complaining he did it right here in the hallway outside. Oh, no, right in the hallway outside? You have one president who acts like he's gagged, never talks, and you have another president who, let's face it, a little gagging sometimes wouldn't hurt him. But it's unconstitutional. Democrat judges and prosecutors can't make up charges just to muzzle Republicans in election season.
We have a gag order, which to me is totally unconstitutional. I'm not allowed to talk, but people are allowed to talk about me. I'm not allowed to defend myself, and yet other people are allowed to say whatever they want about me. This trial is all Biden. You know, this is all Biden, just in case anybody has any question. And they're keeping me in a courtroom that's freezing, by the way, in a courtroom all day long. Well, he's out campaigning. That's probably an advantage because he can't campaign. Nobody knows what he's doing. You can't put two sentences together.
They could put Rachel Maddow on the jury and Trump still wouldn't be allowed to talk about it. They could bring Bigfoot in as a witness and Trump would be fine for saying Bigfoot's real. The trial's first witness, the man who ran the National Enquirer, David Pecker. He testified that he's helped catch and kill negative stories about Trump for years, which isn't illegal the last time we checked. And since it's been going on before Trump was a candidate, it proves the arrangement was personal and not a campaign violation. That should blow up the prosecution's case right there. Pecker testifying, quote, I was the person who thought that a lot of women would come out to try to sell their stories because Mr. Trump was well known as the most eligible bachelor and dated the most beautiful women. Now, after Trump heard this, he leaned over and whispered something to his attorney, and the attorney smiled. It's a guy thing. Pecker testified that one time, a doorman tried to sell a story about Trump fathering a child with his housekeeper. Trump's lawyer at the time, Michael Cohen, said Trump would take a DNA test to prove it wasn't true and said it'd be impossible for an Irish German to father a Hispanic child anyway. These are the kind of things celebrities and billionaires like Trump deal with. Trump's financial success is largely based on his brand. And if his brand takes a hit, true or false, his financials take a hit. People will say anything for a paycheck, and people will pay money to protect their brand. And what's the fuss? Catch and kill is how Democrats win elections. Tara Reade leveled sexual assault allegations against Biden last campaign. The press suppressed it for months. The media caught and killed the laptop. The media caught and killed Ashley Biden's diary. The media caught and killed the Epstein story to protect the Clintons. The media caught and killed the Obama Farrakhan photo to protect the Messiah. The media catches and kills countless negative stories about Democrats every darn news cycle. The National Enquirer does it for a Republican, and the Republican go to jail for it? No. After Pecker, they're going to call the next witness Michael Cohen, the star witness, who admitted under oath he's a serial liar.
I've been convicted on 5 counts of tax evasion.
You stood before multiple congressional committees before today and raised your right hand and swore an oath to be honest. And you lied to those congressional committees. Is that correct?
Previously?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
A reporter for the magazine Vanity Fair has reported that she interviewed you the very next day on February 14th, 2018, about the payment and reimbursement. And she wrote, quote, last February 14th, I interviewed Cohen in his office about the statement he gave the FEC in which he said Trump didn't know about the Stormy payment or reimburse him for it. Do you recall this meeting with the reporter?
I do.
So Mike Cohen was going to write a book. It was going to be a pro-Trump book because he needed the money. And then his legal bills started piling up, and he pitched an anti-Trump book that would pay him more money instead. And now Cohen's making money off this book as the star witness, plugging it on his podcast. Yep, that's right. The star witness of the trial of the century has a podcast. Why not? But he says he isn't the star witness. He's just a narrator.
He's sticking his thumb in the judge's face. He doesn't care. And in fact, I don't think he's going to stop. I think he's going to actually press Judge Merchan to do something more than hit him with the $1,000 fine. Because that $1,000 fine, as you rightly stated, doesn't mean to him. I don't want to be a witness in the case. I don't call myself the key witness. I say I'm the narrator of the story.
The star witness of the trial of the century is allowed to narrate the case, but the actual star, the defendant, can't. Trump can't live tweet the trial of the century, but every reporter and witness can. This is a political show trial that Trump's not even allowed to describe. Trump's gagged, there's no cameras, and voters have to trust what reporters in the room say happened. The same reporters who pushed the Russia laptop and lab leak hoaxes and just started pushing new ones like bloodbath animals and dictator on day one. And anytime Trump opens his mouth, reporters call him a liar.
He said this case is all Biden. There is zero, precisely zero evidence that President Biden had anything to do with orchestrating, running this case. So he says that pretty much every time. It's completely out of thin air.
Now, we asked CNN for comment about this because Joe Biden's number 3 guy at the Department of Justice left the Biden administration to resuscitate this dead case and delivered yesterday's opening argument. CNN refuses to connect the dots. They say this: CNN's Daniel Dale's addressed this numerous times via fact checks and on air and online. Biden's fingerprints are all over this. And CNN says there's no evidence, well, because they won't dust for prints. Politics is personnel. If one of Donald Trump's lawyers left the campaign to work in the Santa Fe DA's office, and all of a sudden the DA's office, out of nowhere, brought homicide charges against Alec Baldwin for the Rust shooting death, you might say there's some evidence that Donald Trump was behind the Baldwin charges. Tish James is taking meetings at the White House. Fanny's partying at Kamala's. Loverboy's meeting with the White House counsel. And Jack Smith's guys met with the White House, too. And this is just breaking. Special counsel Jack Smith's been trying to hide the Biden White House fingerprints, which are all over the documents case. We're getting unredacted documents that say the Biden White House was guiding the criminal case against Trump. Right after Trump left office, the Biden White House counsel immediately stepped in to the National Archives investigation. Deputy White House counsel Jonathan Sue told the National Archives lawyer, "Could we discuss the process before anything is provided to Trump?" The National Archives lawyer called this atypical, the fact that they were consulting with the White House. Then the Biden administration instructed the National Archives to revoke President Trump's executive privilege. And then the White House directed the National Archives to refer the matter to the Department of Justice, spearheading the FBI investigation, codenamed Plasmic Echo. Kind of a stupid code name. Besides a few classified documents that Trump claimed privilege over, the FBI also found Rocket Man's love letter. The letter Obama left Trump in the drawer of the Resolute desk. And oh my goodness, even the poster board of the Hurricane Dorian, you know, the one that Trump marked up with a Sharpie, headed for Alabama. Most of the boxes were printed out articles and memorabilia, but Biden says he had nothing to do with it.
I don't want to get myself in the middle of whether or not the Justice Department should move or not move on certain actions they can take. I've agreed I would not tell them what to do and not, in fact, engage in telling them how to prosecute or not.
A serial plagiarist would never lie, would he? Someone that said his family never took China money would never lie, would they? And as the Biden White House was revoking Trump's privilege and directing the archives to meet with prosecutors, President Biden was scrambling to cover up classified documents that he'd been stashing all over town. Biden was trying to nail Trump to the wall while dispatching staff to multiple locations in different states to figure out what classified documents do I have and where. And when and if Trump goes to trial on the classified documents case, he won't be allowed to say any of this because he'll probably be gagged. And that's the point.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.